Okay. Okay. Tonight we're going to study a little bit of I guess, a strange chapter in Jewish history. In the midst of this, last week we completed what we called the revolt of Yehu, who came, who took over the northern kingdom and destroyed the family of Omri, the family of Achav, the son of Omri, the house of Omri, the house of Achav, as had been predicted by Eliyahu. And at great length, we saw how the fulfillment of all those prophecies, and how Yehu plays the, so to speak, political embodiment of Eliyahu, and the destruction that came with that. Tonight, we're going to see the, so to speak, last chapter of that, but not specifically with Yehu, but with Atalia, which is a very strange story, and we'll take a look at it. Not strange, I'm saying, but just kind of, it kind of sticks out. I want to go through the story. I don't have a lot of, as we would say, chidushim. I don't have a lot of new insights. The text is both ambiguous and clear. It's one of those weird ambivalent texts. It both says, it says what it kind of straightforward. On the other hand, there are things which are unclear, which we don't really have an answer to, and it's not so simple. And we can raise some possibilities, but you don't have the same. Again, I don't think we have the absolute answers and clarity that we might want to have. Okay, so let me get my chumash up. Get my Mechon Mamre. Get that up. And we can start. So we are turning to, I believe it's chapter 11 in the book of Kings 2 of Melakhim Bet. Let's see. Let's get it going. Perek Yud Aleph. Yeah. So, but we need to go back a little bit so that again, it's very confusing, all the names and everything that's going on. So because it's so confusing, we need to, at least for me also, we need to put it back into perspective. Okay, so first of all, just also get okay. So again, just to put the proper perspective, I think we need to go back to chapter 8. At the end of chapter 8, where we're given a little bit of the chronology. The end of chapter 8, so the Bible tells us, Ubishnat Chamesh leYoram ben Achav. So there was a Yoram, the son of Achav, Melech Yisrael, v'Yehoshaphat Melech Yehuda, Malach Yehoram ben Yehoshaphat Melech Yehuda. So there's a Yoram in the north, who is the son of Achav, and there's a Yehoram in the south, who is the son of Yehoshaphat. Ben 32 shana haya b'malcho, 8 shanim malach b'Yerushalayim. And unfortunately, this Yehoram ben Shaphat, who represents, on some level, the joining together with the north and the south, Vayelech b'derech malchei Yisrael kasher asu beit Achav, ki bat Achav hayta lo liisha, vayas hara b'nei Hashem. So he married the daughter of Achav. So he married the daughter of Achav. And the Bible tells us that this Yoram, eventually this Yoram character, okay? So there's Yehoram of Yehuda and there's Yoram. Eventually, the Bible tells us, Vayavor Yoram tzir v'chol arech vayukam balay v'yakeh et Edom asovei, etc., etc. Vayivsha Edom mitachat Yehuda ad yom hazeh az tivsha livna. V'yeter divrei Yoram v'chol asher asa halohem ktuvim al sefer divrei yamim l'malchei Yehuda. Vayishkav Yoram im avotav vayikaver im avotav b'yer David vayimloch Achazyahu beno tachtav. So we have Yehoram, who's up in the north, and in the next pasuk he's called Yoram, which just makes it more complicated. But once Yoram the Judean is dead, he doesn't have to be called Yehoram anymore. He can just be called Yoram. So Bishnat 12 shana liYoram ben Achav Melech Yisrael, Malach Achaziyahu ben Yehoram Melech Yehuda. So we have Yoram and Achaziah. Yoram is the king of Israel, and Achaziah is the king of Judah. Ben Esrim v'shtaim shana, Achaziah Malcho, etc., etc. V'shem imo Atalyahu, bat Omri Melech Yisrael. So his mother was the daughter of Omri, which would make her the sister or half-sister of Achav. So in terms of getting our people down, again, if you want to keep a scorecard, it's good to put this down so that we don't get too confused. So you have Achaziah or Achaziyahu. Achaziyahu is the king of Judah, at the same time that Yoram is the king of Israel, and the mama bear of our good friend Achaziah is Atalyahu, bat Omri, Melech Yisrael. Okay? And that is what we find out. And this Achaziah character, we find out, Vayelech b'derech beit Achav, Vayasar Rabbi Hashem ke beit Achav, ki chatan beit Achav hu. He was a chatan to beit Achav. He had married into the beit Achav. Okay? Okay? And that is the situation. So we have here the ties, the very strong ties between the Beit Achav and the Beit Yehuda. The northern tribes and the southern tribes are deeply connected, which also means that religiously they're deeply connected. And the Bible tells us that they went to war together. Vayelech et Yoram ben Achav lo milchama im Chazael melech Aram b'Ramot Gilad, vayaku Aramim et Yoram, vayashav Yoram hamelech lehitrapei b'Yisrael, v'Achaziyahu, etc. Yarad li'ot et Yoram ben Achav b'Yisrael. So this is what we know from chapter 8. Chapter 9 describes, as we studied last or 2 weeks ago, chapter 9 describes the anointing of Yehu and the murder of Yoram, the murder of this king by Yehu, and he comes. Vayirkav Yehu vayelech Yisraela ki Yoram shochev shama v'Achaziyahu melech Yehuda yarad lirot et Yoram, and he kills Yoram, and as it says here, as he's running away. And he tells Achaziyahu, Mirma, it's a trap, it's a falsehood. He kills Yoram, and then he kills Achaziah. Vayirdof acharav Yehu, vayirma gamoto hikula merkava v'malegur vayanas migido. But he's taken back and buried in Ir David. Okay, so we have here this reality. Then the death of Izebel, she's pushed out the window. And after that, of course, in chapter 10, which is what we studied last week, was the killing of all the rest of the children of Achav. Ulachav shivim banim b'Shomron, vayichtav Yehu sfarim vayishlach Shomron. And of course, you have the killing of these guys. So you have the killing of all these guys. And then finally we have the killing, V'yehu matzah et achei Achaziyahu melech Yehuda, v'yomer miyatem, v'yomru achei Achaziyahu anachnu, v'nered lishlom b'nei hamelech, u'b'nei hagvira, and they kill those people. So basically, the children of Achav have all been killed, the children of the brothers Achaz, so Yoram the main child of Achav, who was king, was killed, and all his brothers. Achaziah was killed, and now all his brothers are killed also. And so basically there's nobody left. And then the second part of the chapter, which we studied last week, was the destruction of the Baal, destruction of the priests of the Baal, and that's where we ended. When we get to, so now when we start our perek, who's left standing? Who's left standing is this Atalia. Now this Atalia, what's she thinking? She is the mother of Achaziah. She's also, again, one of the Tze'etzaim, one of the descendants of Achav, of Omri. She is, again, in the way that the book of Kings presents it, she is a sister to Achav. She is the daughter of Omri. She is in that situation. So she's kind of caught here at this situation, Atalia. And at that point, she says, Vatalia aim Chaziah v'rata Kimet bina vatakam va'te'abed et kol zera hamam lacha. Very strange thing. She goes and kills out all the rest of the zera hamilucha. Now it's unclear. I mean, why is she doing that? Why would she kill the zera hamamlacha, all of the children of the mamlacha? Now, and if you want to take a literal reading, and some meforshim take it, she's literally killing maybe her own grandchildren or nephews or cousins. She's killing the zera hamamlacha. So is she like a psychopath? Why is she killing all these, all the offspring from the mamlacha? The text does not give us any explanation. And it uses a very strange language. If we take the word vate'abed, the word vate'abed is one of those, very, ambiguous phrases. Sometimes it means to kill, like in the Megillah, the Megillat Esther, right? Laharog, lahashmid, la'abed, et kol ha-Yehudim, to utterly destroy all the Yehudim. Is that what it means here? Vatakam vate'abed et kol zera hamamlacha? Or does it mean that she decides to, so to speak, some other way? It's a very unclear phrase. It's a strange phrase. Vatakam vate'abed et kol zera hamamlacha. And again, how you translate it will affect probably what her motivation is. What's her motivation? Is her motivation she's power hungry and she doesn't want anybody else seeing that the children, Achaziahu is dead, all of his brothers are dead, all of his servants are dead. Does she not want anybody else to, she feels that she can come in and usurp the mamlacha? Is that her goal here? And therefore she cuts out zera mamlacha. Could zera mamlacha also not refer to her immediate children, but to all the others who were rivals? Very unclear. The text continues. Vatikach Yehosheva bat HaMelech Yoram achot Achaziah et Yoash ben Achaziah. So the Bible now tells us that Yehosheva took, who was the daughter of Yoram, Achot Achaziahu. So she was the sister of Achaziahu. She took her nephew, at Yoash ben Achaziahu, vatignovoto mitoch bnei hamelech hamumatim. She secretly saves him. Oto vet meinikto b'chadar hamitot vayastiru oto mipnei Atalia v'lo humas. She hides him in the Beit HaMikdash. Vayhi ita Beit Hashem mitchabei 6 shanim va'Atalia molechet al haaretz. Here too, there's a lot of ambiguity here. To hide someone for 6 years And Atalia is ruling for 6 years. She's ruling for 6 years. That's pretty striking. That means that she had support. To be able to rule for 6 years means that somebody politically, militarily, economically, supported you. It means that you had certainly some support. Did they think that putting her in power or supporting her in power would somehow maybe restore connection with Phoenicia? Maybe because, again, remember, we know that Achav married into Phoenicia and brought that relationship, which brought the Baal into Eretz Yisrael and then eventually into Yehuda. The fact that she doesn't know that the kid is being hidden in the Beit HaMikdash, does that itself tell you that she wasn't really interested in the Beit HaMikdash? Does it tell you that the Beit HaMikdash fell by the wayside because she turned once again after Yehu had destroyed the Baal all over the place? She tries to, so to speak, revive the cult of the Baal, and therefore the Beit HaMikdash doesn't interest her? Is that the way to read it? Again, as I said, it's very ambiguous, this entire presentation.
And she is the queen of Yehuda, not of Israel.
I said she's the queen of Yehuda, but she may want to, since she's from the house of Achav, she may want to restore the relationship with Phoenicia that had been developed in the time of Achav. But yes, correct. Also, I do want to note carefully, she is never called Hamalka. Notice it's a very interesting term. We know the term Melech, king. No one in the Tkufa that we're talking about is called a Malka. In the ancient Near East, there were societies which had queens, but in the Torah and in the Nevi'im, women are never queens. She is Molechet al haaretz. She's kind of the de facto ruler. The only time a woman is called a Malka is, of course, Esther HaMalka, but she's not ruling over Israel. She is the consort of Achashverosh, and she clearly doesn't have all the power. If any power, the only power she has is to convince her husband through chicanery to come to a certain conclusion, manipulate her husband. But again, I just point out, again, as I said tonight, I don't have a lot of chidushim. I'm just pointing out certain anomalies and certain things. The fact that this kid is able to be hidden for 6 years says a lot. It says that she probably, it says, number one, that she wasn't really interested in the Beis HaMikdash. She was probably, that wasn't her issue, either because, the worship of the cult was not what she cared about, or because she created, once again, the Baal cult in her area, and that was important to her, not the Beis HaMikdash as a separate Beit HaBaal, like we saw the Beit HaBaal in last week's parak. At the same time, the fact that she's there for 6 years tells me that she had support among some people. Was she seen as the kind of last gasp of the Achavites, those who supported the connections to Phoenicia, those who supported the Baal, those who supported the relationship between the house of Omri and Yehuda? I don't know. Somebody had a question they wanted to ask?
At the time of the Maccabim was one
Yes.
Malka, Shlom Tzion Malka.
That's why I said Tanakh.
Oh.
I said in Tanakh, there are no Jewish queens except for Esther Hamalka in the time of the Persians. You're 100% correct. There are kings and there are queens after that. That's why that's Shlom Tzion HaMalka. And if anyone's ever walked in Jerusalem, there's also, of course, later on Heleni Hamalka and other queens that we know about. But in Tanakh, there are no women queens. Even she is never called a Malka. That is not a biblical phrase meaning biblical, I mean pre-Hurban Habayit. You find it in the Persian books, of course. Okay. Ubashana Shvi'it, Shalach Yehoyada. Who's this Yehoyada? We don't know. He just kind of shows up. But we're going to find out. Again, the Bible holds back a lot of information. We have Yehosheva, again, a theosophic name, Bat HaMelech. And is it interesting that her name is Yehosheva? That she's supposed to remind us of Bathsheba and, the Bat HaMelech. Interesting. And she saves the child, which of course is a type scene that we've seen before in the Tanakh, of the child who's hidden away, saved from massacre, saved from destruction, in the story of Eli, of Ikavod, in other stories.
Moshe Batzmo.
Moshe Batzmo, right? We have all these. This is kind of a trope here. Ubashana Shvit Shalach, verse 4. Shalach Yo Yada vayikach et sarei hameot lakariv elaratzim vayaveotam elav. So clearly, though, there were people who were opposed to this move, because the people who hid this child, this Tinok, who's probably a baby, right? Because he has a meineket, he has a wet nurse. So when he's hidden away, he's a baby, and now he's 7 years old. Again, nice little play on words. Just like Bathsheba has a lot of Shavua language in the story in the book of Kings, in Kings chapter 1 here too. Vayashba'otam. So Yehoyada brings together his group of people, and they make a brit. Beveit Hashem vayarotam et ben Hamelach, the son of the king. A third of you who, again, these are what we would call the mishmarot, the different groups of Kohanim who would used to work in the Beit HaMikdash. So he calls together different groups. He calls together the Sarei HaMe'ot Lakariv Elaratzim, which are probably people, we would call them like the palace guard. Clearly there were some who were not so happy that this Atalia is controlling the country in whatever direction she's going. And a third of you should be over here with me. A third should be in the gate of Sur. So you have to protect the bait from attack. Notice he's already called the Melech. Here he started Ben HaMelech, but this is the big reveal. He's revealed, again, he is the king. Now he's obviously a little boy, which means that the person who actually would be running the show would be Yehoyada and Yehosheva, Bat HaMelech. We don't know the Bible holds back information. We don't know, are they related? Are they not related in any way? The text keeps our interest. From a literary point of view, it's great. All of a sudden we find out, again, little trickles of information. We find out that he is a Kohen. So he was probably in the Beis HaMikdash. He was the one who was entrusted in the care of taking care of this kid for the last 6 years, or protecting or making sure that nothing happened. And Vayavo, and they say, V'kavtem el hamelech ish v'chelav biyado, v'abas derot yumat. Anybody who comes between the ranks should be killed. V'hiyu et hamelech b'tzeito b'vo. Vayasu sarei me'ot kechol shetziva Yehuda Kohen. They do exactly what he says. Vayikchu ish et anashav v'yei hashabat im yotzei hashabat. The group that comes each week, together with the group that was leaving, the Mishmarot, vayavo Yehuda Kohen vayiten Kohen l'sarei me'ot et hachanit v'et hashlatim. There's hidden weapons in the Beis HaMikdash. Clearly, they prepared for this coup. Asher Melech David, Asher Beveit Hashem. Okay, there was clearly weapons that had been hidden away from the time of David. Now, of course, it's a wonderful thing because they're trying to reestablish the proper Davidic line. The proper Davidic line does not have Atalia as queen. She is not the son of David. She actually comes from the line of Achav, and probably reflects a Phoenician part of the line. They protect the king, they protect. ויוציא את בן המלך וייתן לה את הנזר ואת העדות וימליכו אותו וימשכו ויקוף כף ויאמרו יחי המלך. So they make a big moment. They make a big thing. Oh, interesting. Thank you. Okay, they make a big show, and Yechi HaMelech, which of course reminds us of the story of Shlomo HaMelech at the beginning of Melakhim Aleph, at the beginning of Kings, that he is now called Yechi HaMelech, the king should live, the king should live. Vatishma Atalia kol haratzin ha'am vatavor la'am beit Hashem. She sees what's going on. Vateire v'hinei HaMelech omed al amud kamishpat. He is sitting properly as it's supposed to be. Vasarim v'chatzotzot el HaMelech v'chol ha'aretz sameach, and all the Am ha'aretz. Remember, in biblical times, the word Am ha'aretz does not mean what it means today. Today, it means the ignoramuses. In the biblical time, it meant the landed gentry, means the people with power. V'tokeh b'chatzotzot v'tikra atalyat v'gadev v'tomer kesher kesher. She said there is a kesher, there is kesher kasha, there is a conspiracy. Vayitzav yodat sarei hameot pkudei achav v'emrem hotziu otal mibeit l'sderot v'haba charei hamet b'charev ki amara kohen al tumat beit Hashem. She should not be killed in the Beit Hashem. The Beit Hashem is not a place to spill blood. Vayasimu la yadayim. They put hands on her. Vatavo derech moasusim, and they go and they kill her. Vayichrot Yehoyada et habrit. Once again, there's a covenant. Ben Hashem u'ben HaMelech u'ben ha'am liot la'am laHashem u'ben HaMelech u'ben ha'am vayavo kol am ha'aretz beit habal, which I think proves what I said at the beginning. She had not been interested in the Beit HaMikdash. She probably had created a Beit HaBaal. Remember, in the previous chapter, we learned about how Yehu and Yonadav ben Rechev destroyed the Beit HaBaal in Israel, and here there's a Beit HaBaal that exists in Yehuda. Vayavo kol ha'aretz Beit HaBaal vayitzu et mizbechotav et slamav shibru heitev. They destroyed. Vet matan kohen HaBaal hargu lefnei hamizbachot vayasem hakohen pkudot al Beit Hashem, etc. Vayikach et sarei hameot vet hakari vet haratzim vet kol ha'aretz vayoridu et hamelech mi Beit Hashem vayavo derech shar haratzim. They come. Vayeshev al kisei hamlachim, vayismach kol am haaretz, v'ha'ir shakata, and the city was calm. Vet al talyah hemitu b'cherev beit melech hamelch. So that is what's presented in the book of Kings. And in the book of Kings, as I said, what's not clear is exactly the motivation of Atalia. I think between the lines, we certainly have the sense that, she probably wanted to restore the Baal as a legitimate form of worship. Did she also have, desire to connect back to, as I said, the northern kingdoms beyond Israel, meaning Phoenicia, and develop the relationship again, which had been developed by her parents, Achav and Izebel? Maybe her mother was Izebel, I'm not sure. Again, unclear. We're also unclear exactly who this Yehoyada guy was here, but he has some sort of relationship with this Yehosheva. Again, unclear in the text, but he clearly sets up a brit with the people. He restores the brit, and he connects them and puts back the legitimate king, and so the Malchut Beit David is uninterrupted. What I want to do now is compare, like I said, there's not a lot to say here, but what I want to do now is compare this version to the version that we find in Divrei Hayamim. And again, it's interesting because we're going to see that there's slight differences. And again, we can talk about, what these slight differences, what may they reflect? So let's take a look at the book of Chronicles, and we can have theories. They may not be clear. Look at the book of Chronicles, obviously, Divrei Hayamim Bet, because as I said many times, Divrei Hayamim Aleph only gets us to the end of David's life, the beginning of Shlomo's life and reign. So any king post David and Shlomo is always going to be in Divrei Hayamim Bet, starts with Shlomo, etc. So now let us go to chapter 22. Yeah. So the Bible, let's read a little bit. And again, just to notice some of the emphases and some of the differences that appear in the book of Divrei Hayamim. Vayamlichu Yoshvei Yerushalayim et Achaziyahu beno hakatan tachtav ki chol yoshvim harag hagdud, etc. Vayimloch Achaziyahu ben Yoram melech Yehuda. Benes arba'im u'shtayim shana, he was 42 years old. Achaz ben Malcho v'shana chat melech Yerushalayim v'shem imo Atalia bat Omri. She was the daughter of Omri. Gam hu alach b'darkei Beit Achav. He also followed. Ki imo hayta yoatzto leharshia, because his mother was very much wicked. Notice already a first little interesting thing. In the book of Kings, we don't have that phraseology. Achaz follows in the ways of, Achaz follows in the ways of his father Achav, but it's not because of his mother. Here, already from the outset, she is Atalia bat Omri, and Imo Haita Ya'atzto leharshia. She very much was leharshia. She advised him and led him to become evil. Again, very interesting. It's Atalia in the book of Divrei Hayamim seems from the very outset to get a much more negative treatment. I'm not saying that in the book of Kings she's anywhere near a tzaddikas, but here she certainly, from the very outset, she gets a much more negative portrayal. She was the one who raised Achaziyahu to be a B'darchei Beit Achav, and she was Laharshia. Vayasa Rabbi Hashem Beit Achav ki hem hayu lo yoatzim acharei mot aviv lemashchit lo gam ba'atzatam alach vayelech et Yoram ben Achav melech Yisrael lamilchama Chazael. He joined up with Achav against Chazael, and the story that he got, Yoram got hit, vayashal litrapei ki hamakim, etc., etc., and me Elohim hayta tfusat Achaziyahu lavo ubivoo yatzam Yoram el Yehu ben Nimshi Hashem shcho Hashem, and he's killed by Yehu. And again, vayivakesh et Achaziyahu vayilkiduhu v'hu mitchabei b'Shomron vayiviu el Yehu vayimitu vayikru Hashem ki amru ben Yoshafatu asher darash Hashem ve'ein lebeit Achaz la'atzor koach lamamlacha. The Bible then continues, Va'atalyahu aim Achaziyahu ra'ata kimeit bina v'atakam v'tidaber et kol zera hamamlacha. V'tidaber here does not mean she spoke to them. V'tidaber is from the language of lehadbir, like we say in the tefillah lishlom chayilei tzal, yadber sonenu tachtehem. God should bring down, destroy the all of our enemies. Lahadbir in modern day Hebrew, when you hadbarat chaydakim, when you call an exterminator, because you have a lot of jukim in your house, so that's called hadbara. It's to get rid of all the jukim. So vatidaber is very straightforward. It means she got rid of all the zeram and luchala beit Yudah. Vatikach Yehoshavat, which is a kind of later form of Yehosheva, Bat HaMelech et Yoash ben Achaziyahu, Vatignov oto mitoch bnei HaMelech u'moativ, v'tein oto v'tmekto v'chidar v'to, Vatastirehu, Yehoshavat, Bat HaMelech Yoram, Eshet Yehodaya HaKohen. We find out here another piece of information. Yehoyashavat is married to Yehodah HaKohen. We don't know that in... So she is the wife of Yehodah HaKohen. Ki hi hayta achot Achaziyahu, mipnei Atalyahu v'lo him ta'otu. Vayhi itam beveit Elohim mitchabei sheish shanim, va'Atalya molechet al haaretz. So in the book of Divrei Hayamim, we have a much more, negative view that's presented of Atalia, much more negative view that's presented of Atalia. Later on, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone so quickly. Later on, I think is it in the next perek, she's actually called, let's go to here, or is it? She's actually called Hamarsha'at, the real evil one. I think it's in the next parak, or one of the next prakim. Right, because we continue the story. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have stopped. Ubashana shvi titchazek Yehoyada vayikach et tzarei meot Lazaryahu ben Yerocham u'Ishmael ben Yonatan v'Lazar ben Obed. Notice it's much more specific. Babrit vayasov Yehuda vayikaptzu et haleviim mikol harei Yehuda v'rashei avot liYisrael vayavol Yerushalayim. So there's a lot of support amongst the Kohanim and the Leviim. Again, maybe this is because Atalyahu had abandoned the Beit HaMikdash and had basically made them, basically useless. Vayichrot kol hakal brit beveit Elokim im HaMelech vayomer lehem hinei ben HaMelech yimloch kasher diber Hashem mipnei David. And then you have the whole story. Zeh hadavar asher ta'asu hashlishit mikem b'haya Shabbat lakohanim. Everyone should go to their different gates. V'al yavo beit Hashem ki makohanim ha'mishatim alavim hema yavo ki kodesh hema. V'chol am yishmeru mishmeret Hashem. V'kifu alavim et melech saviv. Everyone should. V'abal habayit yumat. You at the Melech Bavo B'Tzeito, protect the king. Clearly, the king, they feared that there would be a counter-revolution, and they're protecting the Yoresh HaEtzer, they're protecting the king who would take over. And you have here, he gives out the weapons, Asher Lemelech David, Asher Beit Elohim, that were in the house of God. Vayamed et kol ha'am v'ish shilcho biyado, etc. Vayotziu et ben hamelech vayitnu lav et hanezer v'et ha'idut vayamlichu oto vayimshechu Yehoyada ubanav vayamru yechi hamelech. And the Bible tells us, again, just like in Melakhim, vatishma talyad kol ha'am haratzim ha'malim et hamelech, she comes, vaterev hinei hamelech omed al amudo b'mavo v'asarim v'chatzotzrot, and everybody's happy, and she tears her clothing. Vatomer kesher, kesher. There's kesher. There is. Vayotze Yehoyada hakohen etzar pikudei achavim hotziu al mibeit hasderot, and all of her entourage, and let her be killed. Vayosimu lo yadayim vatavo mavo shar hasusim, and the Bible tells us once again he destroys all of the Beit HaBaal. Vayasam Yehudaya, etc., etc. He sets up the Beit HaMikdash once again. Vayasam Yehuda pkudot Beit Hashem biyad hakohanim halavim asher chalak David Beit Hashem lalot olot kakatu b'Torat Moshe, etc., etc. So this is, again, it's very similar. The only thing I would say, it's a slight difference in terms of the focus is much more on Atalia, the evilness of Atalia. So we have to summarize, when we ask ourselves the major question of what Atalia's motivation was, number one, you can say that she was power hungry, or you could say that there was a political element, that she felt that she wanted to restore the Beit Omri in some way, and the influence of Beit Omri, and the connection to the Phoenicians, or it could be that it was driven by religious reasons that she wanted to see and happen. Okay, we'll stop here. Next week, as I said, I'm going to be in Israel, and we'll pick up from there, and I hope everyone is well. We are going to get soon, unfortunately, we're going to get to the destruction of the northern kingdom, the final destruction of the northern kingdom in the middle of the book of Melakhim Bet, which will be a watershed event in terms of Jewish history. We're coming to it close soon, but we'll get to that in a few weeks. Okay, I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. Wish everybody well this week.
Thank you, and Siyat Tova.
Toda Rabba. Toda Rabba.
Okay.